The salt wind howled across the jagged rocks of Beacon Island, carrying with it the familiar scent of brine and the distant cry of gulls. Samuel Thorne stood at the base of the lighthouse, his weathered hands gripping the iron railing as he gazed out at the endless expanse of gray-green water. At 58, his body bore the marks of decades spent battling the elements, deep lines etched around his eyes from squinting against salt spray, shoulders slightly stooped from years of climbing the lighthouse's spiral stairs, and hands scarred from countless repairs to the ancient mechanism that had been his life's work. The lighthouse had been his sanctuary and his prison for 23 years. Every morning, he climbed the 147 steps to the lamp room, checking the massive Fresnel lens, cleaning the glass, and ensuring the beacon would shine true through another night. Every evening, he descended those same steps, his footsteps echoing in the hollow tower like a heartbeat counting down the hours until he would climb again. But today felt different. Today, the weight of solitude pressed against his chest like a physical thing, making each breath a conscious effort. Perhaps it was the approaching anniversary, 22 years since Lily had died in these waters, her small boat capsized by a sudden squall while he tended the light above. 22 years of wondering if he had been watching the horizon instead of the beam, whether his daughter might still be alive if he had been more vigilant, more present, more aware of the danger building in the darkening sky. The memory played in his mind like a broken record, as it had every day for over 2 decades. Lily had been so excited that morning, chattering about the shells she planned to collect at her favorite spot on the southeastern shore. She had kissed his cheek and promised to be back before the afternoon tide. He had watched her row away in the small dinghy, her bright yellow rain jacket a splash of color against the gray water, and then he had climbed the lighthouse stairs to tend his duties. The storm had come from nowhere, or so it seemed. But Sam knew better now. He had been so focused on the lighthouse maintenance, so absorbed in his work, that he had missed the subtle signs, the shift in wind direction, the peculiar quality of light on the horizon, the way the seabirds had suddenly gone silent. By the time he realized the danger, it was too late. The Coast Guard found pieces of the dinghy washed up on the rocks 3 days later, but they never found Lily. The creak of boat rigging interrupted his brooding. Captain Ben's supply vessel, the Steady Current, was making its bi-weekly approach to the island's small dock. Sam could see the gruff old seaman's distinctive red cap bobbing in the wheelhouse, and despite himself, he felt a small spark of anticipation. Ben was one of the few people who understood Sam's need for isolation without trying to fix it. He had been making these supply runs for 15 years, ever since the previous captain retired, and in all that time, he had never once suggested that Sam might be happier somewhere else. "Sam," Ben called as he secured the boat to the pier. "Got your supplies? And something extra today." Sam walked down the rocky path to meet him, his boots crunching on the sparse gravel. The path was treacherous in places, worn smooth by decades of weather and erosion, but Sam could navigate it blindfolded. He had walked this route thousands of times, carrying supplies, equipment, and occasionally, visitors brave enough to venture out to the isolated lighthouse. Ben was already hauling boxes onto the dock, canned goods, fuel for the generator, replacement parts for the foghorn system, and the usual assortment of practical necessities that kept the lighthouse operational. The old captain moved with the efficiency of someone who had spent his entire life loading and unloading cargo, his movements economical and precise despite his 70-plus years. "Maritime Heritage Commission called," Ben said, not looking up from his work. "Annual inspections moved up to next week. Thursday." Sam nodded. The inspection was always the same routine: check the logbooks, examine the structural integrity, ensure the light mechanism was functioning properly. It was a formality that had become as predictable as the tides, a bureaucratic necessity that Sam endured with patient resignation. The inspectors were always polite, always professional, but they never stayed long. Few people were comfortable with the isolation that defined life on Beacon Island. "There's something else," Ben continued, pulling out a small wooden crate from behind the larger boxes. "Found this in a pile of old documents at the harbor master's office. They were clearing out storage, and this had your grandfather's name on it. Figured it might be important." Sam's grandfather, Elias Thorne, had been the lighthouse keeper before him, a man known for his inventive mind and mechanical genius. He had maintained the light for 37 years, during which time he had made countless improvements to the beacon system, the foghorn, and the overall efficiency of the lighthouse operation. He had died when Sam was 25, just before Lily was born, passing away peacefully in his sleep after a lifetime of faithful service to the ships that depended on Beacon Island's light. Sam took the crate, surprised by its weight. The wood was old but well-preserved, and his grandfather's name was carved into the lid in the precise, careful lettering that had characterized all of Elias's work. There was something else carved beneath the name, a date from 30 years ago, and the initials LT carved in a childish hand. "Probably just old repair manuals," Sam said, though curiosity tugged at him. The crate felt too heavy for paperwork, and there was something about the childish initials that made his heart skip a beat. Ben studied Sam's face with the keen eye of someone who had spent decades reading weather patterns and hidden currents. His weathered features showed concern, the kind of worry that came from watching a friend struggle with demons that couldn't be fought with practical solutions. "You know, Sam, there's been some unusual storm activity building far out at sea. Weather Service is calling it a weather anomaly. Might want to double-check all your equipment before the inspection." Sam appreciated Ben's concern, but he had been monitoring the weather reports religiously for 22 years. He knew every cloud formation, every wind pattern, every subtle sign that might indicate approaching danger. He would never again be caught unprepared by a sudden storm. After Ben departed, his boat disappearing into the afternoon haze, Sam carried the crate up to the lighthouse. The climb was harder than it used to be, his knees protesting with each step, but he refused to acknowledge the weakness. The lighthouse needed him, and he would continue to serve it as long as he was able. The day's maintenance routine called oil levels to check, lens surfaces to clean, weather log to update. Sam moved through these tasks with the methodical precision of long practice, but his thoughts kept drifting to the wooden crate sitting on his desk. The initials LT seemed to glow in the afternoon light streaming through the lamp room windows. That evening, as the automatic timer triggered the lighthouse beam and the familiar sweep of light began its nightly dance across the dark waters, Sam finally opened the crate. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted the lid, and the smell of old wood and machine oil filled the air. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, was a peculiar device that looked like a cross between a kaleidoscope and a surveyor's instrument. Its brass surface was green with age, and strange, precisely cut lenses were arranged in a complex pattern within its cylindrical body. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, typical of his grandfather's work, but Sam had never seen anything like it before. There was no note, no explanation, just the device and a small pouch containing what appeared to be additional lens pieces of various sizes and shapes. Some were clear, others tinted with subtle colors, and all were cut with the kind of precision that suggested a specific purpose. Sam held the device up to the light, peering through the eyepiece. The lenses refracted the lighthouse beam into intricate patterns, creating shifting geometries of light and shadow that seemed to dance with their own inner life. It was beautiful, mesmerizing even, but Sam couldn't fathom its purpose. His grandfather had always been creating odd contraptions, most of them more artistic than practical, but this device seemed different. There was an intentionality to its design, a sense that it had been built for a specific function rather than mere experimentation. He set the device aside and prepared for his evening rounds. The lighthouse required constant attention, especially during the night hours when its light was most crucial. Sam had developed a routine over the years: check the lamp room at sunset, monitor the weather instruments throughout the night, and ensure the beacon continued to operate flawlessly until dawn. As he climbed the spiral stairs to the lamp room, he noticed something wedged into a narrow gap between two stone blocks near the top of the lighthouse. The gap was barely visible, hidden in the shadows cast by the lamp room's bright illumination, but something about it caught his attention. Working it free with his knife, he discovered a small wooden carving, a bird, no bigger than his thumb, carved with incredible detail. The carving was unlike anything he had seen before. Every feather was individually defined, every curve of the bird's body perfectly proportioned. Its eyes were made of some dark material that seemed to catch and hold light, creating tiny pinpricks of brilliance that made the bird appear almost alive. The wood itself was smooth and warm, darkened by age, but showing no signs of decay or damage. Sam turned the carving over in his palm, studying it in the bright light of the lamp room. It was warm to the touch, though that could have been from his body heat. The workmanship was extraordinary, far beyond anything he had seen in the tourist shops on the mainland. This was the work of a master craftsman, someone who had poured hours of careful attention into every detail. He slipped the carving into his pocket, thinking it might be a good luck charm left by some long-ago sailor. Lighthouse keepers often found strange objects left by visitors: coins, photographs, small personal items that people left as offerings or memorials. But this felt different. This felt intentional, as if it had been placed specifically for him to find. That night, as he lay in his narrow bed listening to the familiar rhythm of the lighthouse beams sweeping across his window, Sam found himself thinking about Lily. The wooden bird in his pocket seemed to pulse with gentle warmth, and he could feel its presence even through the fabric of his pajamas. She had been 9 when she died, a bright, curious child who loved to explore the tide pools and collect shells. She had been fascinated by the lighthouse, always asking about how the light worked, why it was so important, what happened to the ships that didn't see it in time. "Daddy," she had said once, standing in the lamp room with her small hands pressed against the glass, "when I grow up, I want to build something that helps people too. Something that makes them feel safe when they're scared." Sam had smiled and told her she could build anything she wanted, that she was smart enough and creative enough to accomplish whatever she set her mind to. But she never got the chance. The storm had taken her before she could grow up, before she could fulfill the promise he had seen in her bright eyes and eager questions. The wooden bird seemed to grow warmer in his pocket, and Sam pulled it out to examine it more closely. In the dim light filtering through his bedroom window, the bird's dark eyes seemed to flicker with their own inner light. He told himself it was just the lighthouse beam reflecting off the polished surface, but there was something unsettling about the way the tiny eyes seemed to track his movement. The next morning brought the routine of maintenance, but Sam found himself distracted. The wooden bird in his pocket seemed to pulse with warmth whenever he touched it, and twice he thought he saw flashes of light in his peripheral vision. When he reached the lamp room, he noticed that the massive lens assembly, which usually operated in perfect silence, was producing a faint humming sound. The sound was barely audible, more felt than heard, but it was definitely there. Sam had maintained this equipment for 23 years, and he knew every vibration, every whisper of sound that indicated proper operation. This was something new, something that hadn't been there before. Sam checked all the mechanical connections, examined the rotation mechanism, and tested the electrical systems. Everything appeared normal. Oil levels were correct, electrical connections were secure, the massive lens surfaces were clean and properly aligned. Yet the humming continued, soft and persistent, like a distant conversation carried on the wind. As the day progressed, Sam noticed something else strange. The humming sound seemed to intensify when the lighthouse beam swept across a particular section of the coastline, the rocky outcropping about a mile southeast of the island where Lily used to collect shells. The locals called it Lily's Point, though Sam had never been able to determine whether it had been named for his daughter or if the name was just a coincidence. He spent the afternoon monitoring the sound, timing its intensity against the beam's rotation. The pattern was consistent. The humming would build to a soft crescendo as the beam approached Lily's Point, then fade as it moved past. It was as if the lighthouse was trying to communicate with something on that distant shore. 3 days before the inspection, the foghorn broke down completely. Sam groaned as he examined the shattered compressor valve, a critical component that had finally succumbed to decades of salt air and constant use. The part was obsolete, no longer manufactured, and he would need to fabricate a replacement from salvaged components. This meant a journey into the deepest recesses of the lighthouse's foundation, where his grandfather had stored decades of mechanical odds and ends. The basement storage room was a maze of old equipment, rusted pipes, and forgotten machinery. Sam had explored these depths many times over the years, but there were still corners and crevices he had never fully investigated. The room smelled of motor oil and rust, and the air was thick with dust that made him sneeze as he worked. He moved through the cluttered space with a flashlight, searching through boxes of spare parts and discarded mechanisms. Most of the equipment was obsolete, relics from earlier eras of Lighthouse technology, but Sam was skilled at adapting old parts to new purposes. In the far corner, behind a stack of weather instruments that hadn't been used in decades, he discovered something unexpected, a trunk bearing his grandfather's initials. The trunk was larger than the crate Ben had brought, made of the same dark wood but reinforced with brass corners and hinges. Sam's grandfather had been a methodical man, and the trunk was organized with the same precision that had characterized all of his work. Inside, beneath layers of technical drawings and repair manuals, he found the brass device's twin. This second device was slightly different from the first, with an additional set of lenses and what appeared to be a small recording mechanism built into its base. The recording device was unlike anything Sam had seen before, a complex arrangement of springs, gears, and tiny metal discs that suggested it was designed to play back some kind of message. There was also a hand-drawn map of the island, showing topographical details Sam had never seen before. The map was drawn with his grandfather's characteristic precision, every rock formation and tide line carefully documented. A spot on the southeastern shore, Lily's Point, was marked with a small circle and detailed notations that Sam couldn't immediately decipher. The map showed things that weren't visible from the lighthouse, details that could only have been observed from ground level. There were measurements, angles, and technical specifications that suggested some kind of engineering project. But what could his grandfather have been building at Lily's Point? Sam studied the map more carefully, noting the precision of the drawings and the technical annotations in his grandfather's careful handwriting. This wasn't a casual sketch. It was an engineering diagram, complete with elevation markers, distance measurements, and what appeared to be electrical schematics. But for what? The wooden bird in his pocket grew warm against his leg, and when he pulled it out, he could have sworn its dark eyes flickered with their own light. He held the carving near the map, and it seemed to vibrate slightly when he moved it over the marked spot at Lily's Point. The sensation was subtle but unmistakable, like holding a tuning fork that had been struck. Sam spent the rest of the afternoon studying the contents of the trunk. Besides the device and the map, there were dozens of technical drawings, some showing mechanical designs he recognized, others depicting systems he had never seen before. There were also letters, written in his grandfather's hand, but addressed to someone identified only as L. The letters were brief and cryptic, discussing the project and the beacon and waiting for the right time. They spoke of love transcending loss, of messages that could wait decades for the right recipient, of hope preserved in the most unlikely places. But they provided no clear explanation of what Elias Thorne had been working on during his final years. That night, as Sam worked on fashioning a replacement for the foghorn's broken valve, he found himself thinking about the strange humming from the lighthouse lens. He had initially dismissed it as a mechanical issue, but now he wondered if it was something else entirely. The sound was too regular, too musical to be random mechanical noise. It reminded him of the way Lily used to hum when she was concentrating on her shell collection, a soft melody that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. The wooden bird sat on his workbench, its dark eyes seeming to watch him as he worked. The carving had become a constant presence, something he carried with him everywhere. Twice that evening, he thought he heard something on the wind, a whisper, a voice calling his name. But when he paused to listen, there was only the endless sound of waves against rocks and the distant cry of seabirds. The night before the inspection, Sam couldn't sleep. He found himself climbing the lighthouse stairs again and again, drawn by the humming sound and the mysterious warmth of the wooden bird. Each time he reached the lamp room, he would stand at the great lens and watch the beams sweep across the dark waters, always pausing when it illuminated Lily's Point in the distance. There was something there, something waiting to be discovered. Sam could feel it in his bones, a certainty that defied rational explanation. The wooden bird, the brass devices, the map, the humming lens, they were all connected, all part of some greater design that his grandfather had set in motion decades ago. The morning of the inspection dawned clear and cold. Sam had completed his preparation the night before, logbooks updated, equipment checked, lighthouse structure inspected from top to bottom. He had repaired the foghorn and tested all the safety systems. Everything was ready for the Maritime Heritage Commission's visit. But as he stood at the base of the lighthouse, waiting for the commission's boat to arrive, Sam felt a strange anticipation building in his chest. The wooden bird in his pocket pulsed with gentle warmth, and the humming from the lens room seemed louder than ever. Something was about to happen, something that would change everything he thought he knew about his life on Beacon Island. The commission's boat arrived precisely at 10 o'clock, as scheduled. Sam watched from the lighthouse as 3 figures disembarked, 2 men in official uniforms and a woman in a navy blue coat who carried herself with the authority of someone in charge. He recognized her as Inspector Margaret Hayes, a stern but fair woman who had been conducting these inspections for the past decade. But there was something different about her demeanor today. Instead of the brisk efficiency that usually characterized these visits, she seemed almost nervous, as if she was carrying some burden that weighed heavily on her mind. "Mr. Thorne," she called as she approached the lighthouse. "Good to see you again. I trust everything is in order." "As always, Inspector," Sam replied, though he felt an unusual tension in his chest. The wooden bird in his pocket seemed to pulse with warmth, and he could hear the faint humming from the lens room even from the base of the lighthouse. "Excellent. Before we begin the formal inspection, there's something I need to discuss with you. Is there somewhere private we can talk?" Sam led her to his small office in the lighthouse's base, a cramped space filled with weather instruments, repair manuals, and decades of maintenance logs. Inspector Hayes took a seat across from his desk, her expression serious. "Mr. Thorne, we didn't come here just for a routine inspection today. We received some information that changes things significantly." Sam's heart began to race. "What kind of information?" 3 weeks ago, we received a package at our offices. No return address, no explanation, just a box containing some very unusual items. She paused, studying his face. One of them was a letter, handwritten, that mentioned this lighthouse specifically. It was signed with the initials LT, Lily Thorne. Sam's hands trembled as he gripped the edge of his desk. What did the letter say? It said that there was something here, something important that only you could find. It provided very specific instructions about what to look for and when to look for it. The letter was dated 22 years ago, Mr. Thorne. The same year your daughter died. The wooden bird in Sam's pocket began to glow, not metaphorically but actually glow, its dark eyes emanating a soft, warm light that he could see even through the fabric of his shirt. The humming from the lens room grew more intense, taking on a distinctly musical quality that seemed to fill the entire lighthouse. "There's more," Inspector Hayes continued. "The package also contained this." She reached into her briefcase and withdrew the brass device from his grandfather's trunk, the one with the additional lenses and the recording mechanism. "How did you? Captain Ben brought it to us last month. He said it was time, that you were finally ready to receive what your daughter had left for you." Sam's mind reeled. Ben had known about this all along? The gruff old seaman who had been quietly delivering supplies for 15 years had been part of some elaborate plan involving his dead daughter and his grandfather's mysterious inventions? "I don't understand," Sam whispered. Inspector Hayes stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the lighthouse beam that continued to sweep across the daylight waters. The inspection proceeded according to routine. They examined the generator, tested the foghorn, and reviewed Sam's meticulously kept logbooks. Inspector Hayes noted his consistent record-keeping and the excellent condition of the equipment, but Sam could sense her growing excitement as they climbed toward the lamp room. 23 years of service, she said as they ascended the spiral stairs. "That's a remarkable dedication, Mr. Thorne. Your grandfather would be proud." "The light is important," Sam replied simply. "Ships depend on it." "Indeed they do. And you've never failed them." She paused on the stairs, turning to face him. "But perhaps it's time for you to understand that the light serves more than just ships." They reached the lamp room just as the afternoon sun began to angle through the western windows. The massive Fresnel lens dominated the circular space, its precisely cut surfaces catching and focusing the light into a powerful beam. But today, something was different. The lens was humming loudly enough that even Inspector Hayes could hear it clearly. "Your grandfather designed this focusing system, didn't he?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. He modified the original lens assembly to be more efficient." "Remarkable craftsmanship. And you've maintained it perfectly." She walked around the lens, examining it from different angles. "Tell me, Mr. Thorne, have you noticed anything unusual about the lens recently?" Before Sam could answer, the wooden bird in his pocket began to glow with brilliant intensity. The humming from the lens assembly grew to a crescendo, and the lighthouse beam, which shouldn't have been active during daylight hours, suddenly blazed to life with unprecedented brightness. "Now, Mr. Thorne," Inspector Hayes said, her voice filled with anticipation. "Now is the time." Sam pulled the wooden bird from his pocket, its carved surface now glowing like a small sun. The lighthouse beam, instead of its usual wide sweep, focused into a narrow, intense ray that pointed directly at Lily's Point on the southeastern shore. Inspector Hayes handed him the brass device. "Your daughter's instructions were very specific. She said you would know what to do when the moment came." With trembling hands, Sam raised the device to his eye and pointed it toward the shore. The additional lenses in the device caught the focused lighthouse beam and refracted it into a complex pattern of light and shadow. The beam hit the rocky outcropping at Lily's Point, and suddenly, impossibly, the rocks themselves began to glow. And then Sam saw her. A holographic image materialized above the glowing rocks. Lily, exactly as she had been at age 9, standing on the shore with a bright smile and her arms outstretched. She was holding a small wooden bird, identical to the one in Sam's hand, and she was laughing with pure joy. "Daddy." Her voice carried across the water, clear and unmistakable. "If you're seeing this, it means you finally found it. My secret, safe message." Sam's legs gave out. He collapsed to his knees, clutching the wooden bird as tears streamed down his face. The holographic image of his daughter continued to speak, her voice as clear as if she were standing beside him. "I built this beacon with Grandpa's help, to tell you I'm always watching, always loving the light. Grandpa said that love was like light. It never really goes away, it just changes form. Don't carry sadness, Daddy. Find your joy. Your light guides me, just like it guides all the ships. I'm safe, I'm happy, and I'm so proud of you." The image showed Lily placing the wooden bird on a rocky ledge, then turning to face the lighthouse directly. "The bird will find you when you're ready, Daddy. When the sadness gets too heavy, and you need to remember that love is stronger than loss. And when it does, remember, love is the strongest light of all." Sam was sobbing now, 22 years of grief and guilt pouring out of him in great, heaving waves. The wooden bird in his hand grew warm, then cool, then warm again, like a heartbeat. Like life itself. The holographic image continued for several more minutes, showing Lily at work on various parts of the project, carefully carving the wooden bird, helping her grandfather install equipment at Lily's Point, testing the projection system, and recording her message with the serious concentration of a child working on something monumentally important. "I know you think it was your fault, Daddy," the image said, but it wasn't. The storm came so fast, faster than anyone could have predicted. "You taught me that sometimes the sea takes what it wants, and that's not anyone's fault. That's why the light is so important, not because it can stop every storm, but because it gives hope to people who are lost in the darkness." The image began to fade, but Lily's voice remained strong and clear. "I love you, Daddy. I've always loved you. Take care of the light, but don't forget to take care of yourself too. And remember, whenever you see the wooden bird's eyes glow, that's me, telling you that I'm still here, still watching, still loving you." The holographic image dissolved, leaving only the normal sweep of the lighthouse beam and the gentle glow of the wooden bird in Sam's hand. But something fundamental had changed. The crushing weight of guilt that had pressed against Sam's chest for 22 years was gone, replaced by a lightness of spirit he had almost forgotten was possible. Inspector Hayes knelt beside him, her own eyes wet with tears. "There's one more thing, Mr. Thorne. Captain Ben asked me to give you this when the time was right." She handed him a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. Sam's name was written on the front in his grandfather's careful script, and below it, in a child's handwriting, "For when Daddy is ready to smile again." With shaking hands, Sam opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in his grandfather's handwriting, dated just 2 days before his death. "My dear Sam, if you are reading this, then Lily's beacon has finally found you. She came to me with this idea just weeks before the accident, wanting to create something that would help you if you ever felt lost or alone. We worked on it together in secret, a message of love that would wait for you as long as necessary." The bird was her final project, carved from driftwood she collected at her favorite spot. She insisted on making the eyes from pieces of the old lighthouse lens, so they would always hold the light. The projection system in the rocks is solar-powered and will function indefinitely, waiting for the right combination of focused light and the bird's presence to activate. She wanted you to know that love transcends loss, Samuel. She wanted you to understand that the light you tend every night is not just a beacon for ships, it's a beacon for hearts that have lost their way in the darkness. Your daughter's love for you was absolute and eternal. Let it guide you home to joy. The recording will play only once, but the bird will glow whenever you need to feel her presence. Captain Ben has been watching over you all these years, waiting for the right moment to reveal this gift. Trust him. Trust the light. Trust love. With all my love and hope for your healing, your father, Elias Thorne." Sam read the letter twice, then looked up at Inspector Hayes. "How long have you known?" "Captain Ben contacted us 6 months ago. He said you were finally ready, that the grief was loosening its hold on you, and you were beginning to find your way back to the world of the living. He was right, wasn't he?" Sam looked out at Lily's Point, where the rocks had returned to their normal appearance. The wooden bird in his hand pulsed with gentle warmth, and for the first time in 22 years, Sam felt something other than grief fill his chest. It was joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. "She's beautiful," Inspector Hayes said softly. "And she's right, you know. Love is the strongest light of all." Sam stood slowly, his legs unsteady, but his heart strong. The lighthouse beam continued its eternal sweep, but now it carried more than just warning. It carried love, hope, and the promise that some bonds transcend even death. That evening, after the Maritime Heritage Commission had departed and the sun had set behind the western horizon, Sam climbed the spiral stairs to the lamp room one more time. The wooden bird sat on the desk beside his grandfather's brass device, both of them catching and reflecting the lighthouse beam as it swept across the sea. Captain Ben had stayed for dinner, and they had talked long into the night about Lily, about grief, about the remarkable things that love could accomplish when given enough time and patience. Ben had wept as he told Sam about finding the letter, about the agonizing decision to wait so long before revealing the secret. "She made me promise," Ben had said, his voice thick with emotion. "Made me swear that you had to find the bird first, had to be ready to receive the message. She was wise beyond her years, that little girl. She knew you would need time to heal enough to hear what she had to say." Now, alone in the lamp room, Sam picked up the wooden bird and held it up to the light. Its dark eyes, cut from pieces of the original lighthouse lens, sparkled with tiny reflections of the beam. He could feel Lily's presence in the carving, feel her love and joy and hope flowing through the smooth wood into his hands. "Thank you," he whispered to the night air. "Thank you for waiting for me. Thank you for never giving up." The lighthouse beams swept across the dark waters, no longer just a warning to ships, but a testament to the enduring power of love. Sam Thorne, lighthouse keeper of Beacon Island, had found his way home at last, guided by the strongest light of all, the love of a daughter who had refused to let death silence her voice. In the distance, the waves crashed against the rocks at Lily's Point, and if you listen carefully, you might hear the sound of a child's laughter carried on the wind. The wooden bird sat warm in Sam's hand, its light-catching eyes holding all the love in the world, and the lighthouse beams swept on through the darkness, forever changed by the miracle of a message 22 years in the making.